In 2025, President Trump roared back onto the world stage, but not with smooth handling. Instead, it was an erratic, gear-grinding return marked by tariff tantrums, geopolitical provocations, and a domestic immigration crackdown dubbed Operation Safeguard. At the G7 summit in Alberta, tensions surged as Canada and Europe hit the brakes on what they saw as economic aggression. The big question now is this: under Trump's second term, is America idling into isolation? Buckle up, because what happened at this summit could shift the entire transmission of U.S. global leadership. Tariff tensions revved, Trump's economic punch to Canada. President Trump reignited a trade war with America's northern neighbor by slapping a 25% tariff on Canadian imports and a 10% duty on energy, delivering a blow straight to Canada's aluminum and steel sector. Prime Minister Mark Carney didn't stall. Canada hit back with matching tariffs and launched a fiery Buy Canadian movement that quickly gained national traction. Just before the G7, Trump upped the ante, doubling steel and aluminum tariffs to 50%. That sparked outrage not just in Ottawa, but among U.S. manufacturers who rely on Canadian materials for everything from auto parts to food packaging. Despite the summit setting the stage for diplomacy, no resolution came. Carney stood his ground, asserting that Canada wouldn't bow to economic bullying. Trump, meanwhile, softened his tone publicly, but maintained pressure behind the scenes with economic nationalism back in high gear. Canada is pivoting, strengthening ties with the EU and Indo-Pacific allies as Trump clings to America first. Many are asking, is this the beginning of America alone? But it wasn't just Canada drawing a line. Europe came prepared to push back with even more force. Europe hits back, no more free ride for U.S. unilateralism. European leaders came into the G7 summit ready to counter Trump's disruptive diplomacy. French President Emmanuel Macron fired the opening shot from Greenland, publicly rejecting America's rumored territorial ambitions. Greenland is not to be sold, not to be taken, Macron declared, echoing the sentiment of allied Arctic nations. The main event, however, came from European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. She issued a scathing critique of Trump's tariffs, calling them economic landmines that threaten investment, stability, and the average household budget. Tariffs are taxes, she declared, and families and businesses pay the price. But von der Leyen didn't stop at criticism. She offered solutions. Her speech called for the diversification of critical supply chains, reinforced climate commitments, and showcased Europe's €150 billion fund to support Ukraine. It wasn't just a rebuttal, it was leadership in motion. Germany, Italy, and Japan echoed these themes. The message was unified. If the U.S. chooses confrontation, the rest of the G7 will carry on together for a summit once led by American consensus. This year's tone signaled something new, a post-U.S. playbook in progress. Before we delve deeper, do us a favor, smash that like and subscribe. It helps us reach more viewers like you who care about where engines and global politics collide. Now, let's shift gears again. Trump didn't just clash with allies. He went straight for shock value next. The G8 revival pitch, Trump's authoritarian curveball. Just when the summit seemed calibrated for cautious diplomacy, Trump shifted gears dramatically in an unplanned moment. He proposed reinstating Russia into the G7, effectively bringing back the G8. Then he took it even further, floating the idea of adding China to the mix, forming a hypothetical G9. His justification: Putin should be here. You wouldn't have a war in Ukraine if he was, Trump argued. The suggestion stunned leaders. It contradicted the G7 unified support for Ukraine and its values-driven foundation built on democracy and transparency. Leaders swiftly pushed back. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz called it unacceptable, and Italy's Giorgia Meloni emphasized that including autocracies would dismantle the alliance's moral compass. Even U.S. diplomats reportedly scrambled to downplay the proposal. Trump defended his view as pragmatic realism, insisting that you can't solve geopolitical conflicts without all players at the table. Critics, however, warned that this approach risks legitimizing aggression and eroding accountability. But while the G7 rejected Trump's global provocations abroad, a very different kind of crackdown was unfolding right at home. Operation Safeguard ignites, deportation blitz hits the streets. While global attention zeroed in on Trump's tariff tirades, a high-stakes domestic campaign was quietly shifting into gear. Operation Safeguard, launched just days after Trump's 2025 inauguration, marked a rapid return to aggressive immigration enforcement. Chicago, home to large immigrant enclaves like Little Village, was the first target, with over 200 ICE agents deployed to detain undocumented residents regardless of prior criminal records. Branded by Trump as the largest deportation operation in U.S. history, critics saw something else entirely: a campaign built on fear, not public safety. Local resistance was swift. Legal aid groups, activist coalitions, and city officials rallied to protect vulnerable families, but legal avenues for pushback remain limited. The economic fallout is already rumbling. Undocumented workers, power sectors like hospitality, construction, and agriculture. Removing them risks paralyze zoning operations, driving up costs and widening labor gaps, especially for small businesses. ICE faces challenges to budget shortfalls, overcrowded detention centers, and lawsuits alleging overreach. Yet the administration presses forward using immigration as both enforcement tool and political fuel. And as this domestic blitz unfolded, allies abroad were making their own pivots toward each other. America's place in the pack, allies chart their own course. At the 2025 G7 summit in Alberta, a chilling realization emerged. America is no longer guaranteed a front-row seat in global leadership. Trump's unilateral moves imposing harsh tariffs, promoting Russia's return to the G7, and walking back climate commitments sparked more friction than consensus. The U.S., once the convener of allies, now appeared out of sync. Canada, leading the summit, asserted its independence by aligning with Europe on everything from green tech to trade stability. The EU countered Trump's disruption with concrete proposals, bolstering Ukraine's defenses, strengthening supply chains, and expanding free trade with India, Australia, and Latin America. Mexico also broke ranks, sharply condemning Trump's latest tariff hike. All of this paints a new picture: a multipolar world where countries are tightening bonds among themselves, often without Washington at the center. The G7 didn't collapse, but it evolved. Trust and predictability are the new currency, and transactional diplomacy. Once Trump's hallmark has left the U.S. on shaky ground. So what's the final verdict? After a summit full of friction, tariffs, and shifting allegiances. Verdict: leadership on the line. Will the U.S. rejoin the convoy? The 2025 G7 wasn't business as usual. It was a high-octane referendum on American leadership. Domestically, Operation Safeguard revealed a presidency eager to enforce and provoke internationally. Trump's confrontational diplomacy left traditional allies questioning whether the U.S. still values cooperation or simply expects compliance. The divide is widening as Europe mobilizes billions for Ukraine and Canada forges new Indo-Pacific ties. Washington's go-it-alone tactics may be pushing its closest partners toward self-reliance. Meanwhile, the economic and ethical toll of mass deportations threatens to undermine the very values the U.S. once championed abroad. So gearheads and policy buffs, what do you think? Can the United States steer itself back into the global driver's seat? Is the shift toward bloc alliances a natural evolution or a direct response to Trump's style? How might this realignment ripple into industries like automotive, manufacturing, energy, and global trade? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your take. And don't forget to subscribe for vehicle insights and global updates. Thanks for watching, and keep those engines running. We'll see you in the next video. You can now check out any of the videos on the screen. There's plenty more to explore.